There are lots of times in our career as Christian professionals where we face things that create an uncertainty. We don't know what's next. It's something we didn't want. It is a setback professionally. We get demoted. We have a difficult conversation with the customer. We don't land that big sale. We get overlooked for promotions. There's a tension between us and our boss or us and fellow employees. All kinds of things that happen frequently. And we're left in that moment with a decision. How am I going to handle this? We can look at it one way in a sinful perspective, or we can look at it one way in a righteous perspective. And I had an insight with James 1 that I've done a lot of research into. I've spent 40, 50 hours of research into this that I want to share with you, that I've shared now with quite a few other clients of mine and close friends of mine, that I think will help make a profound difference in the way that we approach these and the decisions we make when it's time to make that decision in this fork in the road. It is complex. I hope it's not too tedious in the way I describe it, but I'm asking you, please stick through to the very end. It will all kind of come together. I promise you. So stay tuned, and I'm going to share with you a way to approach these uncertainties that can glorify God profoundly and help make us who we were supposed to be in the eyes of the Lord. Hi, my name is Shawn Sommerkamp, and this is Motivationeer Christian Coaching. Okay, I am going to use Blue Letter Bible a lot here and reference my notes quite a bit, but keep it as brief as possible. To start, I want to say there's a very famous baseball player back in the day named Yogi Berra, and he had this amazing saying, lots of cool, funny sayings. But this one is, he said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. The idea here is, let's not over dramatize life. Let's not take life too seriously. Let's have some fun with this when we come to a decision point. And what I want to do is help take it to a spiritual level. And what I want to do is talk about James 1 and two clear progressions captured within James 1. The first progression is we face a trial. We look at this trial in such a way that it is a proving or a testing of our faith. And then from that perspective, we develop an endurance or a perseverance, as some translations say. And then from that, it creates in us a maturity and a completeness. Then there's progression number 2, later on down in James, which I'm going to read them both, where we face a temptation. Our lust is dragged away and entices us, and it conceives and gives birth to sin. Sin grows up, and when it's full grown, it gives birth to death. Those are the two paths. Now, let me read them. I'm using Blue Letter Bible. I'm going to change it to NASB 95. I might go back to NIV every so often, but here's what it says in verses 2 through 4. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Now let's scroll down to 14 through 15. But each one is tempted when he is carried away and enticed by his own lust. Then when lust is conceived, it gives birth to sin. And when sin is accomplished, it brings forth death. Okay, you see the progression there? In 2 through 4, the trial, the test, proving, endurance, and completeness, perfection. 14 through 15, it's a temptation, lust, sin, death. Here's the profound insight. I'm so excited to share this. Both of them start from the exact same place. It's the ancient root Greek word, paradso. Let's take a look. So in James 1:2, when you encounter various trials in the NASB, there is a footnote, hover over it, or temptations. Let's look at the Greek word, the root of it. The Greek word actually used here is parasmos, G3986. But when you click on this, you can look at the parasmos, the root word, the etymology is parazzo. There it is. Now let's go to verse 14. Click on the tools, which is the instant interlinear. I use reverse, so it's in, the English language flow. Each one is tempted. Parazzo, 3985. That's what we just looked at. Parazzo. The same Greek word. That means when we start off, it is the same thing. Whether it's a trial or a temptation, we are faced in that moment, this uncertainty, not knowing what's ahead. We can't see the future. We're kind of groping in the dark because we can't predict what's about to happen. In that moment, it's going to either turn into something that creates perfection or something that creates death. How do we know which way it's going to go? It's based on what our first next step is afterwards. This answer is tucked directly in between those verses in James 1. Here's what it says. So we've got James 1, 2 through 4. Right here is the answer, right after. But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. Actually, I have it quoted, so I didn't read the NASB 95. I actually quoted the NIV. So let me read it in the NIV. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. In the NASB, it says, but if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him. That means in this moment when we face this uncertainty that's always uncomfortable, let's immediately go to God and ask for wisdom. God, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what's ahead. Please give me wisdom and insight from you. Many of us go, I'm already doing that. No, maybe, but likely not, because lots of us immediately go to God, but we don't go to God to ask. We go to God to complain. Why is this happening to me, God? Please take this away from me, God. This is so painful. Please don't let me go through this, And it's not an asking for wisdom. And I deeply believe this is the exact same thing of sin. This is our fleshly nature complaining. This is what the Israelites did after all when they were released from Egypt. They went into the desert and they started complaining. They went to God, in a sense, through Moses. We can directly go to God. We complain. Here's what's interesting. If you go to Exodus 13:7, I'm pretty sure that's where it is. When they left Egypt, they were in marching formation to fight a battle if they needed to. But it says God knew that if they went the short route through the Philistine territory, they wouldn't be able to make it. So he took them the long way through the desert. And here these people are complaining instead of saying, God, give us wisdom. We've gone through this desert. It's more difficult than we thought. Life was much more predictable back in Egypt. It wasn't better, but we think because life is predictable, it's better. It's not. It's better to be unknown and with the Lord than known and without him, known and in captivity, or it's better even to have the unknown residing and waiting for an answer instead of going to God and complaining. So what we want to do in these moments of uncertainty, when we first start to feel that twinge of stress and worry and anxiety, in Matthew 6, right? Don't worry. Let's pray for wisdom. Now, I want to parallel this to something which I'm not going to reference in the Blue Letter Bible, but just tell you. A parallel to this that I think is profoundly powerful as well is the parable of the four soils. We have that appear in three Gospels, Luke 8, Matthew 13, and Mark 4. Combining those three stories, you can kind of get the full picture. You can get a full picture from each one, but there are nuances that you can't find in just reading one. So one of these nuances that I think is powerful is a nuance where Jesus is speaking to the crowd and the 12. That's covered in all three places. And when he tells the parable, the crowd breaks up and goes their way. The disciples then come to Jesus. And they come to Jesus, and you can see the nuances of this. They say, what does this parable mean? In a sense, this is confusing. I think one of the places they say, why do you speak to them in parables? Jesus then says in that moment, the secrets of the kingdom of heaven have been given to you. That's Matthew. The secrets of the kingdom of God have been given to you. I think that's Mark, maybe Luke. But to them I speak in parables, so that they'll be ever seeing but never perceiving, ever hearing but never understanding. This is amazing. If I asked 10 people, 9 out of 10 people might say, if I asked them, what do you think Jesus meant when he said, to you you've been given the secrets of the kingdom of heaven? I did this recently, yesterday. I asked 2 people, what do you think that means? And both said, oh, it means that we have this cool insight. God puts these things on our heart that we can understand and grasp. I think 9 out of 10 people would say that, but that's not what it says in the parable. In this little caption, they didn't know what it meant. They asked Jesus, what does this mean? This is confusing. Why are you speaking in parables? We're lost. If the secrets of the kingdom meant they were given this unique insight, they wouldn't have had to ask Jesus. Those people were ever seeing but never perceiving, ever hearing but never understanding. That means, and this is us, when we go down the wrong path, when we just complain or we don't go to God at all with it, we are going to never really understand no matter how many times we go through it. But we've been given the secrets of the kingdom because we can go to Jesus, which is what they did. That is why he said you've been given the secrets. We know Jesus. We can ask him, what does this mean? What are we going through in this life? Instead, when we go to God and complain, or when we don't even thinking about going to God to ask for wisdom at all, our sinful nature has a chance to conceive with sin. We get into coping mechanisms. Instead of seeing it as a test, learning to endure and becoming perfect, we, in order to deaden the pain of the uncertainty, the anxiety, we do foolish, stupid things like go gambling, go shopping to make ourselves feel better, go drinking, get into promiscuity, looking at, things on the internet or flirting around with, women or men to make ourselves feel better. Sometimes it's we work harder at work and get into this compulsive work habit. We just do all kinds of unhealthy coping mechanisms. Yes, I think when we go to God and complain to him, it still leads to us coping because the anxiety hasn't gone away. We're not listening to God. We're just fueling our anger. We're kind of giving full vent to it. I think this is what the hard path represented. Seeds are sprinkled on us. That's the trial, which could also be a temptation if we don't go the right way. But the seed is sprinkled on us. And if we don't do something about it in that moment, like going to Jesus, the evil one will come and take it away. Now in Matthew, that evil one, the word one doesn't exist in the Greek. It's evil, paneros. Evil snatches it away. It takes away the opportunity to learn from this, to see it as, oh, this is a cool test that I'm going through that I can study for and learn and get better at and endure. Instead, evil comes and snatches away the opportunity for learning. This is the ever hearing but never perceiving, ever seeing but never understanding. Because we let coping come in. When we start to cope, instead of going to God, asking Jesus, praying for wisdom, we will eventually be tempted by sin. We will give in to our own sinful desires. We'll end up flipping through channels, scrolling through Facebook, then these ads pop up and we start lusting. This is for men and women. Or for women, we can go drink wine because, on every TV show and every movie, you're a cool woman if you're drinking a glass of red wine. It's weird how this happens. Or we go shopping endlessly. Let's get some more handbags. I recently spoke to someone in my neighborhood. They have 49 pairs of shoes. Okay. We all do in lots of ways. I'm not judging. Believe me, I have my coping mechanism can be playing video games all day because I don't want to deal with the stress. Or I go out and start working in my yard and I get really compulsive about how the yard looks. What we want to do in these moments of uncertainty, when the stress is coming upon us, get used to stopping in that moment, forcing ourselves when we go to God to not utter a word of complaint, but instead close our eyes, look into the dark blackness. I think this is Deuteronomy 5 says that God is in the pitch blackness. Deuteronomy 5:22, these words the Lord spoke to all your assembly at the mountain from the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the thick gloom. Exodus 20 and 21, Moses said to the people, do not be afraid, for God has come in order to test you, and in order that the fear of him may remain with you, so that you may not sin. So the people stood at a distance while Moses approached the thick cloud where God was. 2 Chronicles 6:1, then Solomon said, the Lord had said that he would dwell in the thick cloud. 1 Kings 8:12, again, then Solomon said, the Lord had said that he would dwell in the thick cloud. And then we ask God, please give me wisdom. What does this mean? What I'm going through, what does this mean? Help me understand. And just listen. Make that a habit. Not continuing to speak endlessly. Ecclesiastes 3:10, I think it says, God is in heaven, you are on earth, so let your words be few. Let's let these few words be just a question. God, give me wisdom. What does this mean? And then be quiet. Initially, we're going to doubt that he's going to answer. We're going to be confused because our mind is restless. This is what I think why James 1:6 says, but if you doubt, you should not believe you're going to receive anything. In fact, that's exactly what happens. We start doubting, we start thinking about the doubt, and it kind of runs away with us. Practice this, and what you will find is God answers. God will give you an answer very quickly. Yes, sometimes he doesn't, but as we train ourselves to go to God and listen to wisdom and be spiritual men, this is what I think in James 4:5, it says that God jealously desires the Spirit that he caused to live in us, not the Holy Spirit, capital S, lowercase s. NIV, a bunch of others say lowercase. NASB, unfortunately, has a capital S for that. Let's really get into that habit. I'd love to hear what you think about this. Even if you disagree, I really love and appreciate dissenting views as well. But let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll know when I create a new video. Please also consider becoming a member at Motivationeer.com. Your membership really supports this channel. And don't forget, your career is not just a way to make a living, it's a way to transform the world.